ladies and gentlemen. One minute they protesting to take down slave owner statues, the removal of Christopher Columbus statue. And that was a big thing going on during the Biden-Harris administration. They was going around taking down these statues because they was claiming that these was former slave owners, right? Right? Let's get into this video, y'all, to show you the hypocrisy of these Democrats, y'all, in these sanctuary cities, y'all. They're here to cause mass confusion. They pick and choose their battles. One minute they want the slave owner statues down. Now all of a sudden in Philadelphia, they mad because Donald Trump took down the presidential slavery photos of George Washington owning slaves. Yes, take that shit down. Right? Didn't George Washington own slaves? How about Thomas Jefferson? Did he own slaves? Wasn't y'all taking all these slaveholder statues down for a reason? So now all of a sudden we fighting for to keep the George Washington house slavery pictures up to remind us of slavery and how many slaves George Washington had. Y'all some confused ass people out there, man. That's why I said all of y'all that's out there participating in this foolishness got batteries in y'all back. And it's a shame that you niggas don't get the point. You niggas are out there more than any of them other groups protesting and marching over your own demise. That's crazy. Y'all don't help your own people in the community. Y'all don't do nothing for your own people in the community. But yet y'all out there marching and protesting about a George Washington presidential house in Philadelphia. And we all know George Washington had slaves. God damn it, take that shit down. We don't want to keep being reminded. Ain't that what y'all said? When Joe Biden and Kamala Harris was in office, and y'all was running around pulling down Christopher Columbus statues, General Lee statues, Albert Pike statues, all types of shit. Now all of a sudden y'all want them to replace the photos that he took down, and y'all want them put back up though. What we doing, y'all?
My name is Loaisa Rivera, and I'm representing the Oscar Mandela Committee for Decolonization and the Boricua Unity and Power Outreach. We're here in support of Decolonize This Place and their anti-Columbus Day tour. I'm a community student, and I've heard various times my professors say how Christopher Columbus was a hero, how he discovered us, how he should be honored. And in 2017, I can't believe that that's still going on. That's ridiculous, and that's why this is such a big deal, because it's not just a statue, it's not just a day, it's a message that we're constantly putting out, that we're okay with this kind of behavior, that we're okay with standing
rock, we're okay with the
colonial
photos they took down.
And we're not.
Constantly remind you that you was a slave, goddammit. And George Washington had plenty of slaves.
I'm a member of MTL Plus Collective.
Listen,
it's a crew of artists who facilitate Decolonize This Place. So what this tour is
Decolonize Philadelphia
narrative to the settler colonial imperialist narrative that is offered by the American Museum of Natural History.
So the
tour was about
you can't make this shit up, yo.
Strong. And we were moving together, choreographed together through the museum. At each stop,
pay attention, y'all. They think everybody took that goddamn experiment 19 and lost their mind. Everybody didn't lose their mind.
Treaties and forced removals.
This tour comes with 3 demands to the museum as well as to the city, which are rename the day to Indigenous Peoples Day, remove the statue outside of the museum,
Christopher Columbus has slaves,
President Teddy Roosevelt on a horse. Flanked below him to his left is a mostly unclothed African-American slave, and to his right is a mostly unclothed
same thing at the presidential house. Y'all have photos of them goddamn slaves.
And lastly, we're here
take that shit down.
To the museum and to the city to respect.
Good job, Trump. Take that shit down. Just like they was doing, taking down all the statues, the slave owner statues. Now all of a sudden we care about the slave owners. Get the fuck out of here.
We came out here because we wanted to talk about what did Columbus Day truly mean. And when we watched more in depth, we realized that Columbus Day, at the beginning of Columbus Day, was trying to deceive us from the truth. And knowing that it's actually a horrible day. I think it's important for us to show up.
It's like the presidential house is a horrible sight. To show slaves.
Spread the truth to others, and they won't be deceived
what we doing?
Holiday being so special.
For me, when when I think about this museum, when I look at this statue, and when I look at the statue of Columbus, or I look at the statue of Dr. J. Marion Sims, I'm thinking of the little black and brown and indigenous kids.
That's how I'm thinking about George Washington
city,
presidential house.
right? Who are being told visually over and over again that their lives do not matter. And in 2017, quite frankly,
look, the hypocrisy.
We're not here for it. We've never been here for it. And
the
what we're trying to
hypocrisy
do here
is
get people across struggles to stand together. Not just this is the statue I want taken down, but these are the statues that we want taken down.
That's right.
And really, for me, it means a lot for
Good job, Trump.
And having them grow up in a place where they can see themselves, accurate representations of themselves, not something like that's represented in the statue that's behind me.
Special thanks to
this morning. Nobody's a little less tense this morning. Nobody's carrying a bat. Nobody's wielding a gun right now. But there is a crowd of people here discussing this issue about Christopher Columbus, the context of his history, and whether or not this statue that's been in Marconi Plaza for years
it was taking
should come
statues down all
now,
over the
there has been
goddamn
no formal
world.
discussions about taking this down, but
all
you know how
over the
rumors
states
spread
they
on
was
social
taking
media.
these
People
statues
worried
down.
that somebody might tear it down. So that's why this group of people who mostly live in South Philly came out last night. As you can see, there are some police officers over here to the left side who are keeping watch over the events today. Again, today largely not so tense, but yesterday with some of those armed protesters with bats and guns, things did get a little bit tense, and there were some skirmishes between both sides.
Look,
so this was yesterday, video posted to Twitter by Unicorn Riot, which calls itself a nonprofit journalism organization. They were saying their reporter was threatened by the crowd.
Idols down.
There were some men wielding bats, but no serious cases of violence were reported by police. That crowd stood watch over the statue for hours into the night. You know, for many, Christopher Columbus has become a symbol of the invasion of Native American lands. Others say he's a symbol of white supremacy. But this is Philadelphia with deep Italian roots. On that statue, it says presented to the city by Philadelphia by Italian citizens. So, of course, South Philly has deep roots in Italian history. So lots of people are saying to keep the statue here and learn from history. So debate on both sides. We talked to both sides earlier this morning. Take a listen.
If this statue has to come down too, bring it down. Rizzo came down. This can come down too. I'm very concerned about their need to escalate to this kind of, bringing guns to what could be peaceful.
Why? Why? That's all I want to know. Why? Why do you want to tear that down? Why? It's history. Why do you want to tear down history? You're not going to change it by tearing that down. There's nothing's going to change.
As we come back here live, there's been some discussion between these sides saying maybe they should put up a sign on this statue explaining more of the context of history. Again, right now things are very peaceful. People are just chatting the issue out. Philly police will be here for much of the day, especially as this is expected to grow over the coming hours as this debate continues. But at this point this morning, just a lot of people coming out early talking about the issue and no issues right now. For now, we're live in South Philly, Marconi Plaza. Randy Gyllenhaal.
My name is Summer. I'm a 6th grade at Riverside Elementary School. Something I want to know is, when George Washington had the authority as president, why didn't he get rid of slavery?
Now, the question of slavery in George Washington's presidency is a difficult one. Why didn't he just end slavery when he was the president of the United States?
Right.
Well, he didn't have the authority to just end slavery. Slavery was a legal form of human bondage and property ownership that existed at the time that they created the Constitution of the United States. And so the president of the United States doesn't have the authority to just declare that some property or some ways of doing things that were legal are illegal. The Constitution says that creating laws are done in Congress with the approval of the president. So the Congress passes legislation, it passes laws. They have to be approved and signed into law by the president.
Didn't approve it.
And then they have the
they
force
wanted
of
to keep
law
slaves. God damn it.
Now, even that would have been difficult to do because the Constitution, as we know, when it was ratified, there was a compromise between the slave states and the free states. And so slavery was going to be allowed to exist under the Constitution. And you see the real conflict in the United States over the future of slavery happens once the country starts to expand. So when we start to add new states, so we add, of course, Ohio and Tennessee, and we add Indiana, and we add Missouri, and each of these new states that come in, there's a question about slavery, whether these states will be free or slave. until ultimately it gets to the point where they make a big compromise in 1820 called the Missouri Compromise, and then another big compromise in 1850 where they're trying to balance the number of free and slave states as the country expands. And so it's that issue of expansion that people really start to fight over and feel like that's the area where they can end this institution.
I tended to be a little uncomfortable talking about George Washington and slavery. When we think about the presidents who owned slaves, George Washington as the first president did indeed own slaves, as did his wife. At the time of his death, there were nearly 300 enslaved people living at Mount Vernon.
Wow.
So he was a large slaveholder. My name is Erica Armstrong Dunbar, and I'm the author of Never Caught, the Washington's relentless pursuit of their runaway slave, Ona Judge. She was an enslaved woman. She was born at Mount Vernon sometime in 1773-74, around the era of the Revolution. As Ona grew older, she was expected to learn to be a seamstress, an expert sewer, which she did indeed become. But at some point during her teenage years, she became the preferred slave of Martha Washington. She was tasked with the most intimate of responsibilities. She would help Martha Washington bathe. She would brush her hair. She would sew her clothing. She was there 24/7. She was always present, but really supposed to be never seen, which was the role and the responsibility of what we call domestic slaves who worked inside of the household. Ona learns disturbing news. Martha Washington's granddaughter would be married, and she knew that Martha Washington was unhappy about the marriage. There was one thing she could do to ensure that her granddaughter was prepared for marriage and a good place. She would give her the very best wedding gift she could give her, and that would be Ona Judge. So when Ona learns that she's going to be given away to Eliza Park Custis, a difficult woman, she makes the decision to run, and she leaves the Washingtons' house while they were eating supper, never to return. With the help of friends of the Free Black community in Philadelphia, she finds her way to Portsmouth, New Hampshire. And George Washington would spend literally the rest of his life attempting to reclaim her. Wow. And Ona Judge, through her own strategic mind, through the help of friends, was able to turn away Washington's slave catchers at every turn. For 50 years, she lived as a fugitive, and we often say that those folks are free who get away from their enslavers, but in actuality, Ona was never truly free. She was simply never caught. Washington, towards the end of his life, began to reassess enslavement. At different times, he stated that he wanted to step away from slavery, from being a slaveholder, but for various reasons, he could never make it happen.
Fuck George Washington.
We do know that at the end of his life, on his deathbed, his will mandated that all of his slaves were to be emancipated, were to be set free upon the death of Martha Washington.
After he died,
So when George Washington died, over 120 people knew that they would be set free once Martha died. George Washington did, I argue,
take that statue
in death what he could not do while he was living. What does this make us think about George Washington? Does it help us to think about him differently? I think it makes us see him as a complex person, not as simply the man on the corner or the dollar bill, the gentleman with the powdered hair and the false teeth, but to think about him also as a human being with flaws and failures. And that, I think, gives us a deeper understanding about the founding of the nation.
Yeah, remove that shit, y'all, in Philadelphia. Look. Remove that shit from the president's house. You don't want to see that shit the same way they was taking down Christopher Columbus statues. Tear that shit down, man. For real. Tear that shit down. You don't want to see that shit. George Washington was a slaveholder. God damn it. Why are we keeping this shit up? To remind us of our past history, goddammit. Tear it down. That's right. Remove that shit, y'all. Remove that shit. You understand me? Non-enslaved people who were owned by George Washington. Take that shit down. God damn it. Y'all was taking down Christopher Columbus statues for the same reason. Now, all of a sudden, Donald Trump. Now, let's listen to this.
For the residents of the
puppet.
city of Philadelphia, that there is a cooperative agreement between the city and the federal government that dates back to 2006. That agreement requires parties to meet and confer if there are to be any changes made to an exhibit.
He was a slave owner.
Our city solicitor,
that's the same reason
Renee,
we took down
Garcia,
Christopher
is
Columbus statues.
in conjunction with the amazing members of our law department team in working to follow up on that cooperative agreement. And we will keep you posted as to the results of all of our actions.
Good job. Good job. George Washington was a slave owner. And that's the picture they marching around with now, showing that George Washington was a slave owner, brutalizing our people, ancestors, and they want to keep this shit up in Philadelphia. But yet, back at the ranch, they was taking down motherfucking Christopher Columbus statues, General Lee statues, because they said these people were slave owners. But what was George Washington? God damn it. Take that shit down. Good job, Trump. Good job.
This morning, a legal battle could be brewing involving a historic site in Old City. This is getting a lot of talk this morning. Josh Sanders back for us at the Pulse Desk with the latest on this. Josh, good morning.
Janelle, good morning. Mayor Parker's administration is now suing after exhibits about slavery were dismantled at the president's house in Independence National Historical Park in Old City. We just got our hands on a copy of that lawsuit and are reviewing it. That just coming into the newsroom. Take a look at the park where the exhibits were located. The walls now empty, only the outlines of where they were remain. This is what they looked like before. The dismantling follows an executive order from the Trump administration back in March, ordering a review and the potential removal of displays that represent America in a, quote, negative light, saying the displays, quote, neglect the progress America has made.
What progress? We took down Christopher Columbus statues.
If we don't commemorate it, if we don't recognize it, we're disrespecting the people who had to go through that terrible time.
Well, y'all disrespect Christopher Columbus then.
It was all ripped down and presumably put away in storage for who knows how long.
You can't make this up,
It's a terrible day for American history.
And just
why is it a terrible day for American history when George Washington had slaves? He was a slave owner.
Take any opportunity to rewrite and whitewash our history.
Ain't nobody whitewashing shit.
City we learn from our history
battery
in Pennsylvania,
control niggas.
When it's painful. Now here at the Pulse Desk, we're tracking everything breaking and developing as it hits our newsroom all morning long, making sure you have the information.
We got the information.
Day,
God damn it.
Yeah, it should be interesting to see how this all plays out, Josh. Thank you for that.
From both sides, sir. You said there was hatred, there was violence on both sides. Well, I do think there's blame. Yes, I think there's blame on both sides. You look at both sides. I think there's blame on both sides, and I have no doubt about it, and you don't have any doubt about it either. And if you reported it accurately, you would say.
Nazis started this. They showed up in Charlottesville.
Excuse me.
To protest.
Excuse me. They didn't put themselves down, Mr. Young. And you had some very bad people in that group. But you also had people that were very fine people on both sides. You had people in that group. Excuse me. I saw the same pictures as you did. You had people in that group that were there to protest the taking down of, to them, a very, very important statue and the renaming of a park from Robert E. Lee to another name. George Washington was a slave owner. Was George Washington a slave owner? So will George Washington now lose his status? Are we going to take down, are we going to take down statues to George Washington? How about Thomas Jefferson? What do you think of Thomas Jefferson? You like him?
He was a slave owner too.
Good. Are we going to take down the statue? Because he was a major slave owner. Now we're going to take down his statue. So you know what? It's fine. You're changing history, you're changing culture, and you had people, and I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists, because they should be condemned totally. But you had many people in that group other than neo-Nazis and white nationalists, okay? And the press has treated them absolutely unfairly. Now, in the other group also, you had some fine people, but you also had troublemakers, and you see them come with the black outfits and with the helmets and with the baseball bats. You had a lot of bad people in the other group too.
Into the night. You know, for many, Christopher Columbus has become a symbol of the invasion of Native American lands. Others say he's a symbol of white supremacy. But this is Philadelphia with deep Italian roots. On that statue, it says presented to the city by Philadelphia by Italian citizens. So, of course, South Philly has deep roots in Italian history. So lots of people are saying to keep the statue here and learn from history. So